All right, everybody, we should be live for our next roundtable discussion here on the Game Wisdom channel. We have another great lineup for tonight. We're going to be discussing the idea of making games virtually. And we have our panel back, sans one. Unfortunately, Tim couldn't make it, but Shark found the perfect cost-effective way of editing out Tim for our cast this week. And that's kind of what our topic's going to be all about, making games as cost-effectively as possible. And as always, I'm going to give the roundtable a chance to go around and introduce themselves. So we'll start with Tomo, and then we'll work our way around from there.
Hi guys, my name is Tomo Moriwaki. I've been a game designer for maybe somewhere between 22 and 24 years. I am a co-founder of a small dev studio called Hyperkinetic Studios, where we do indie development and work for hire. And my claim to fame is being the creative director on Spider-Man 2.
I'm Jack Mamais. I've got about 25 years of experience. I've worked as a director, producer, lead designer. Now I'm in an indie studio, so I'm doing a little bit of everything. I've worked at some big companies like Activision, and worked for big companies like EA and Ubisoft, and now I'm an indie developer.
And I'm Sharky, I was a hobbyist for a very long time, from like 2004, and then I got into it professionally in about 2014, and working on getting my first successful game. Our last one sadly did not make it, but.
All right, it's great to have everybody on for tonight. Again, we're going to have Tim, but he is currently busy making his own game. He's been going dark on that. But Tim also had experience working virtually on his first game and on his upcoming topic, or his upcoming games. So, let's get into this topic. And for those of you watching, we're going to keep this to about an hour for tonight. So if you do have any questions for the panel on virtual development and anything along those lines, please get those questions in. At around like 9:45 my time, or about 45 minutes from now, that will be officially last call for questions from the chat. So, as I was telling the group before we began, I've been working from home for the better part of a decade now, but I haven't really done too much with virtual development, so I'm going to kind of let our panel here kind of lead these discussions. So, for the group then, does anyone want to kick things off when it comes to virtual development?
Well, since I suggested a topic, I guess I'll kick it off. Most of my career, I worked for AAA studios, and obviously that's on ground, brick and mortar. And we did a number of methodologies. We started with waterfall, which was in '95. That was the way to do it, and we stuck with waterfall for the whole time, which is a pretty top-down way of doing games. While I was working on Crisis, that was in 2007. We got introduced to Agile, and so I started using Agile, which I hated at first, because since Agile is bottom up, it really, in a way, strips leads of what their whole thing is on the team, which is to manage people, and the team almost manages itself. And I really fought against it at first, because Agile, like I said, kind of took away. You stop being a lead, and your job is to be. They call it a mentor. So you kind of you still approve things, and you still make calls on things, but basically it's more about the team's planning and what the team is doing on a weekly to weekly basis. Fast forward to when I started a company. Well, I joined a company, Impeller, run by my friend Edmar, and we started working in the black, and we decided to do a game completely virtually, and this was essentially distributed development. And we looked at the different methodologies to do it, and we looked at waterfall, and we looked at Agile, and Agile really became the way that we went with, and it was a really, really, really good way to do it, because most of us are doing it part-time. This is not our full-time job. I'm a game professor day to day, which pays my bills. And I do this. I work on my game at night, and most of my team have other jobs, and they work on it at night. So it's really hard when people are just doing it in their spare time, and they're doing it more or less for sweat equity, even though we did get a Kickstarter, which helped pay some of our people. You really don't want to be ordering people around, telling them what to do. You really want everybody to have say in what's going on. So it really became a democracy for us when we're all working on it, and using Agile to do that has really worked out for us so far. We're almost to our beta. We've shown the game in several conventions and been pretty successful. We've had an alpha out for about a year where we've been playtesting everything, but it's all been done virtually. I have people on the team I have never met face to face. I've only seen them on a camera, which is kind of a strange thing.
And I know, like, a few of the developers I interviewed over the last decade, a lot of them went virtual, being very small, very first-time developers. The thumbnail for this table included a screenshot from the game The Dark Side Detective. And the reason why I included that was, I think that was a team of 3 or 4. I remember I interviewed 2 of them, and they were talking about how they were just basically like traveling around like Europe, trying to save as much money as possible. So they like never really like stayed in one spot or had an official office.
That's interesting.
And a quick question, looks like from the chat, Chris asked us, can this topic relate to solo developers? I guess, what does the table think?
Well, I think that's a good question for Sharky. He's much closer to being a solo developer.
Well, I'm definitely not a solo developer, but I think that in a way, yes, and in a way, no. Like, in a way, yes, you're working from home, probably. I don't see you buying an office or anything if you're just going to be solo kind of thing. But at the same time, no, because there's not that coordination effort between developer to developer. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I think that is sort of the heart of the conversation, but I think both parts are legitimate kind of conversational topics. So half yes, half no. It's not black and white.
And the half that you describe as yes, I think I would be inclined to agree in that if you're going to be a solo developer, you're inevitably going to be having to reach out to community members or other devs. Like, a true solo developer might ultimately be more social than like a small team. A small team just talks to each other and can get really kind of in that bubble, and they won't leave it. And in which case, they're kind of conventionally using the pathways of communication that are offered, like, with Slack or Discord and your schedule of calls and stuff. But as a solo developer, you'll be talking to people all the time and trying to figure out things that you don't know how to do. And I think some of these remote work lessons kind of connect a little bit to that, at least.
Yeah, I would agree with that. The other thing is, depending on how you define solo, because some people define solo as in you're the only developer on the team, and then you outsource labor, and they're not counted as part of the team. So, on that aspect, I would definitely say this would be 100% part of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know the developer, what was his name? Oh no, I can't let forget his name. I had him on. He did Armageddon Empires. It wasn't Cliff Harris. It was something along those lines. I'll have to look that up. Vic Davis, that was his name. And he did a lot of the work on his own, but he still outsourced kind of like the music and the art. And there are, of course, the debates over what is solo dev is up there along, our video games art on Twitter sometimes.
Yeah, I consider
they are
myself
art. They are art. Anybody says they're not, it's crazy.
Let's see, if a game has art and music is art, and games are art, writing is art, those are all parts of art. So like saying that games aren't art is like saying all those things you just combined aren't art, or by combining them, they are no longer art.
Right, but if you say film is art. I mean, no one doubts that film is art, and film we're basically like very close to film, even though instead of cameras we have code that's doing the driving of it. But it's it's a bunch of artists coming together and a bunch of art forms coming together to form a gestalt, basically. So anybody that says games are not art, they're certainly fooling themselves, because maybe it's more commercial and because it's super successful these days. I guess the most successful entertainment medium on the planet right now. But it is, and you have a lot of people out there who granted are not making amazing art. They're making crappy art, and they're making art for business or art for money. But it's still art, Leonardo da Vinci got paid a commission for Mona Lisa. Is that not art? It certainly is art. Mozart was paid for his compositions, so he was doing it to pay the bills. But certainly, it is art. So
I remember seeing a toilet in an art museum that was just unpackaged, and that's all it was just a unpackaged toilet. It wasn't. They didn't make anything. They just ordered a toilet, unpackaged it, and put it in a museum. It's like,
yeah, but arguably they lit it in a way, right? So even that is art, the way you light things, because it's a presentation, right?
Well,
and an expression.
Was it the original Duchamp toilet, or is it inspired by at that point?
Yeah.
That said, I would actually say that for anyone who says that games aren't art, or who would say almost anything isn't art, like well, you could say like someone is grandma's crochet work art or not, that when the moment you're willing to say something isn't art, I don't know if you like many of those people wouldn't be in a great position to explain why they think the art that they like is.
A lot of people think visually, right? When they see art, they think of painting, and classically, that is the most famous form of art. When you say art, almost that's the picture in the dictionary is of a painting, because it's a strictly visual thing, and they're in their little pigeonhole if that's the only way they can see it. Because I would say any form of expression would be art.
Yeah, but haven't we had games that look like old paintings? I specifically remember Josh playing a game not too long ago where it looked just like old paintings, and you moved around, and it was a very sort of meme-worthy game, but it was all the art looked like they almost snipped it out of old paintings and stuff.
Yeah, the procession to Cavalry. Cavalry? It's not Calvary. It's spelled differently, but it's from the four last things.
Version of the word, right? The
I haven't heard of that.
Catholic Calvary. There's a movie with Gleason. What's that? The guy that was in Braveheart, called Calvary.
Jack Gleason.
Dom Hall's dad. Brendan Gleeson. Excellent movie. That's where I learned what the word meant, actually. But yeah, not to. I think it's okay to have a bit of a divergence from our topic and talk about art and what it is. I think it's a really important conversation. I think it's one that can become controversial, but it's a worthy topic. Like, my position on this is that it's very hard to define what art is, and that by narrowing your definition of it, you're really just narrowing what you're willing to look at. And that in a lot of cases, when someone's being critical of whether something is or is not, that they themselves are simply just kind of saying that they don't like something, in which case it's almost definitive that it is art at that point, because it's like, I don't like your art, so I don't even want to call it art. I think the most commonly consumed form of art, by the way, is food.
Some of it.
Nice, exactly.
But to bring us back around to the topic, can our art be created virtually? Is that a thing that can happen? Can expression happen, over the internet, be combined to make something that's valid? The funny thing is I think almost everybody's doing virtual distributed development now, because all studios that I know of are closed. I think my brother works at CD Projekt Red, and I think they've got a few people coming back to the studio, but basically they've all been working online to bring Cyberpunk home. And I know all of my students, we are doing, all of them are doing virtual development now over Zoom and over Discord. Discord's the main tool that everybody uses, I think, because it's the freest one. And I think everybody's adapting to this, and I don't know if this is going to become the new normal or not. But if we don't cure this COVID, I mean, certainly maybe this is the way it's done from now on, and this is the way things are made, which scares me because I like working face to face. But this, you know, because I always like going to a studio. I like getting up and getting dressed and going somewhere because you get out of the house and then you appreciate your house that much. But when you're in your house all the time and on your computer all the time, it took me a good, when I started moving to teaching virtually, it took me a good month where I was even remotely comfortable doing it. Yeah. So there is a curve to get associated with it.
Yeah, and I think, like, for myself, I think I may be the opposite of Jack in that regard. Like, I grew up, I have multiple problems with my right leg. From birth, I had to have surgery on, so I've always had trouble being mobile. I really can't drive a normal car because I don't have control over my right foot for it. So it was essentially a case of adapting or dying, that I had to learn to do things virtually. And I think, like, that's, like, the weird thing. Like, for, like, my family, I was pretty much, like, the first person to be doing things virtually. Like I said, I started Game Wisdom back in 2012, but I was doing my blogs and my other work beforehand. And it takes, I think, it's definitely an adjustment. I think that may be a topic in of itself, of moving from, in person to virtual. And it is, I think to your point there, Jack, it is very hard to kind of, I think, like, switch your mind from, work and home. I think even I still have that trouble myself, because there are days where I feel like I don't want to do a damn thing. I can just sit in my bed all day, watch TV, play on my phone. Then there are days where, I'm on my computer 7-8 hours typing and working, and, I don't even think about moving from my seat to get something to eat because I'm just so focused on that work. And I think, as you said, like, if this going to become the new normal, I have a feeling, my gut tells me it is. Just in the way that I think once people get used to it, that I think it's going to be even harder to try and convince someone, oh, you were able to figure out how to work from home 5 to 6 hours or 7-8 hours? How about you come drive to the office, every day and come back to us like that?
I do think you lose synergy when you work in this environment. I think because even though everybody's connected directly, you definitely are limited by this interaction of your microphone and your computer, as opposed to walking around and seeing people at their desk in their environment and working with people and forming little groups and stuff like that. It's definitely more vibrant, I think, when you have people all together in one place. I don't think it's going to replace it unless we don't, we have more plagues that pop up or whatever they want to call this thing. I think once they cure this thing, though, it's going to go back. I think definitely AAA is going to stay on ground. You may have a few people that go virtual, but I definitely believe, I think you certainly can control the narrative better when you're in a physical location, because everybody is there to work. Whereas when I have people that are working virtually, you don't know if they're working or not unless you make them share their screen, and people are not totally comfortable with that all the time. And they could be doing anything. So I think productivity, at least for me, productivity is way less than if I was working in a studio and I had a stand up every day, and I can they know I can walk over to anybody's desk at any time, and as soon as I see them alt tabbing, I know they're not working. Right. I mean, okay. Yeah, I see you. So, but this has some, I do believe it does have some advantages, especially with tandem coding or people that are working tightly on something where it's definitely more comfortable to share a screen virtually than it is to have two people at a desk. So I do think when you have people that are working really, really tightly together on something, like for instance, as we write game design documents, we do it in Google Docs, and we have everybody looking at it and commenting on it and working at the same time. I definitely like that synergy when you have a bunch of game designers that are working together on doc and things are changing real time as you're working on it. So there definitely are advantages, and I definitely think there are disadvantages.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm very much along the lines of Josh, because like I'm disabled. I have autism and anxiety problems. So like just me being around people just is not a recipe for me being anywhere near productive kind of thing. Or maybe even being there at all.
I can see that.
So yeah, I mean, like I pretty much have to work remotely. No choice. But I do see Jack's point about being able to keep everybody on task kind of thing. But as doing it remotely my entire time as a developer, what I've kind of learned to do, and this is probably not the fastest way to do things, but it works kind of thing, is at least in certain cases when you have a good employee, it works. There are certainly random people that you hire, that really had no credentials kind of thing, and then they end up proving that they weren't worth hiring. But, actual, people who were going to work to begin with, and wouldn't go get fired on the first day, those people, it's like, here's your task, I need you to make, I go to my art guy, and here's a whole bunch of inspiration, this is the kind of vibe we're going for kind of thing. And here's all the names and descriptions of all these characters. I need you to make an image for each character. I need you to, do that within, a certain time period. Do you think you can do it? And he's like, yeah, I think I can do it kind of thing. And he's gotten, we're approaching that time period in about, I think it's about 2 weeks. And he's about 80% done. And he's just worked on it when he's had spare time, basically, or whenever he's not working on anything else, because does very much a lot of outsourcing and everything. So he swaps from project to project. I think he also has a real life job. I'm unsure about that, but he gets stuff done in trying to fit it into that time frame kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And if we don't make it, we don't make it kind of thing. But we're pretty dang close at this point, and then we got the other stuff behind that he's got to do. But and since I'm not paying hourly, it's not really an issue. I'm paying by the job. So like when you're having the fixed rate kind of employment with the fixed task kind of thing, it tends to work out better. Like it's still not going to be the fastest thing, and I see that being thorn in any AAA's side kind of thing, and they're probably not going to put up with that. But they would probably also not do probably much, if any, of the fixed thing. They would require hourly and daily kind of thing, and just constantly working. And that may actually work for them because they are AAA. They have that kind of power over people. Mm-hmm. And so but I don't see that taking over all of AAA. I see that taking over maybe a small portion of AAA, and when I say a small portion, I mean maybe a small portion at every studio kind of thing, like maybe 5% of the workforce is remote kind of thing, and the other 95% come in. And maybe they'll run out of, maybe they'll need more employees and not have enough seats, and they don't want to expand their building or whatnot. And they're like, you know what, you can work remote because, or one of their more experienced guys, and then they bring in, the newbie into the office. Maybe they'll do something like that. I'm unsure, but I don't think that AAA will completely abandon it kind of thing. But I definitely don't think they're going to truly adopt it when they don't have to.
Well, I know publishers, when they do due diligence, they do not like distributed teams because it's impossible. They like everything to be in one place, and I think they still don't take distributed teams as real game teams. We've had publishers look at us, and they're interested until they find out we're distributed, and then they're like, okay, no thanks. You know, we don't. They don't trust it. I mean, it may just be because they're old school, but I think they like to have a brick and mortar because they like to know that there's something, you know, you're paying the rent and you're serious about it, as opposed to virtual development where it could be, you know, just a bunch of guys doing it as a hobby or something and not necessarily fully dedicated to it.
And I think that's an interesting point there. It's almost like a Schrodinger's game development. Is it a game or is it not a game until it's actually out? And it's something that we, unfortunately, we can point to any development sometimes having those cases where you can have a team and they'll say we're working on a game, we're going to do it, and it just collapses right, you know, just completely collapses. Now, whether or not that happened because it was virtually, probably not. But as you said, when you have a studio, when you have something in-house or, you know, a solid brick-and-mortar place, it does kind of give that extra layer of distinction. Kind of like for myself, what I'm doing with, you know, being a book game, my book published or self-publishing. That anyone can say they're a self-publisher. But if you actually have somebody putting the bill out, if you actually have a place that, you know, puts that stamp on it, it gives it that certain extra layer of distinction to it.
Well, you know, it's interesting. I think that, you know, over at Hyperkinetic Studios, last 7 years, I think we've probably done something like 60 or so projects, most of them very small, and basically interacted with a large number of types of clients, and probably only like maybe 5 or 6 times kind of the more conventional game publishers, and or the older publishers, maybe might be a better way of describing them. And they definitely had a policy, right? There was their policy that the certain checkboxes needed to be fulfilled. But I do feel like a lot of those checkboxes are slowly relaxing over time, and mostly because a lot of the game development companies from the past, they had their offices. Remote work wasn't really all that possible, except for maybe the more savvy engineers that could figure out how to get their remote desktops working back when that wasn't so common. But I mean, it is worth noting, right? At the end of February of this year, thousands of people over the course of a single weekend were suddenly working from home.
I think it's definitely a skill now.
Yeah. And I want to bring up something that Chris said a few minutes ago, because I think this is another really interesting point. And let me get it here. So he said, if anything, this brings the introverts back into the business cycle. And I think
Nice.
that is a real. Again, I am 10 for 10 an introvert. I took that psychology test back in college, and I think that is another really good aspect of this. Like, and as Shark said earlier, dealing with autism and social anxiety, like there are people who aren't comfortable being in a public place, or you know, being in front of dozens, hundreds of people coming into a store, or, you know, being in when I worked at Comcast, we were packed in sardines in these cubicles, and it was also just like a disease-ridden place. Like every week, somebody got sick. I got like a horrible virus one time from it. And being able to do this work in a place that is comfortable for you, that you don't have to deal with, you know, any kind of extra issues that can affect your mental or physical health, I think is another very solid benefit to this.
Well, there is a downside to that too, because like when they're working at AAA's or wherever in the office, hopefully the people who designed the office designed it ergonomically so that they're not getting any kind of, you know, backaches or anything like that permanently, kind of thing. And it's up to you at your home office for that, which may be either a good thing or a bad thing, depending on if AAA actually did ergonomic stuff.
I don't know.
Everybody does a bad job of that.
No studio I worked at cared about ergonomics.
No.
When they went to buy the chairs, they bought the cheapest chairs they could. I mean, when I ran a studio in Venice, we went and bought Herman Miller chairs for everybody. It was a huge expense, but everybody was happy with their chair, right? And everybody had better posture and stuff like that. But Activision, Crytek, there was not a lot of money spent on chairs.
Well, then that's a win for working at home.
Something I wanted to add, though, to the perspective on creating an environment that may be more friendlier to kind of people with social anxiety or who are very introverted. I'd have to say my experience in AAA development was, I would describe it as extremely friendly to social anxiety. That the space and opportunity to hide out and not have to socialize with anybody was very real. And if you didn't want to talk to people, if you didn't, I never felt like it was the kind of environment where you had to socialize.
Now, I think one other thing one possible, I think both good and bad of all this would have to be conferences and networking. Because people in the game industry have been talking about for years about kind of like the stranglehold of GDC and having to spend thousands of dollars in travel and expenses, and that's not even getting your foot in the door there if you're not already a member of the industry, and finding ways of having more of these conferences online. But conversely, you run into the issue, of course, of how do you do networking virtually? Like if a conference just puts all of its presentations online, you can't really meet people in person, talk with them, and organize things along those lines.
Yeah, it's a huge problem. I mean, if you've been to GDC, most of the work gets done and the hiring gets done at the bars after, where everybody's like exhausted and they're letting their hair down, and then you see the real people. They're not on show, which when you're virtually, you're always on show, right? You always are presenting a face and presenting yourself. Whereas GDC, you go to a bar and everybody's having a few shots and everybody's drinking. Stuff gets done there, and you're going to randomly hook up with people you never would have hooked up with before, and things are going to happen, and beautiful things are going to come out of that. Whereas in a way, even though virtual is more freer and that everybody's on their own, it is in a way more structured than if it was something like GDC is going to be online this year, and I'm just not even looking forward to it at all. I mean, no offense to GDC, but part of the magic of GDC was me reconnecting with friends I haven't seen for years, and friends that I'm not all the time playing games with or talking to, people that that go back 20 years to Activision. All of a sudden I'll run into them and say, man, hey, what's up? And it's just it's a wonderful, magical thing. Whereas if it just became this virtual aspect, it's just a very, very contained, specific thing, and you're talking, it's an echo chamber because you're going to be talking with people that you're always talking to, and you're not really putting yourself out there. I think that's real dangerous in a way, and I think that's a downside from all of this.
Yes.
Well, I think it could be an upside, but it's not. It's the emphasis is could be, because if we could get all the developers, let's just say every developer in the world joins a single Discord server, then we have all the connections right there at our fingertips, and we're real world every day, all day, 24 hours a day, right there in the chat.
Well,
and
I think
that could be really beneficial.
I think another roundtable topic of sorts that we might want to pursue would be the future of online networking. I think that it's going to require just a fundamentally different solution. I mean, distributed development requires us to change our perspectives a bit and figure out a way to optimize to get good results with, and work against the weaknesses and work for the strengths. And those happen to be just different than a meat space brick and mortar office. And the same goes for getting to know people. To be fair, it's like what Jack was talking about in terms of late night and GDC. It's absolutely true. I mean, pretty much every night, at least for myself, for the last 10 years at GDC, inevitably someone is involved in the conversation who I've never met and who doesn't know a ton of people in the industry and is just kind of just standing there. And I think it becomes, for a lot of, at least the veterans that I like to spend time with or drink with or whatever, which it's for the most part, I think it's all of them. But that said, it's what the right way to do that is you see that kid standing there and you suck them into the conversation. You show them that the way you network is that you hang out and you hang out. Yeah. There is no pretext or anything other than hanging out and navigating that hanging out. And I think that's something we could be teaching people online.
Yeah. And you like the look of them and the feel of them, which virtually you can't get, right? It's like, hey, that guy's pretty cool. Like, bring him over here, And I know a lot of my students. Most of them who go to GDC get jobs in the industry. Where a lot of them, when they're just trying to do it from the sanctity of their own bedroom, they have a hard time finding jobs, right? They struggle to get out there and break through with a resume when a million other people have resumes that are flooding these companies. So the ones that go to GDC are the ones that get in the industry. So it definitely is better.
Yeah. Well, I think there's a good reason for that, because a resume isn't really a valid way to get a job. It's there is a kind of a industry culture that you need to kind of learn about, and this isn't to understand like what a particular team likes. It's that there is something that brings all of us developers together. There is a normalizing thread amongst all of us, no matter what it is that we're doing, and face-to-face socializing or not socializing without an agenda becomes a way for you to kind of read that code off of other people. And then once you start reading it off, of course it affects you. It makes you that way, and then now you are of the like type, and now it becomes easier to fit in and get a job.
Yeah, and
it does.
Yeah, and I think I agree with everything that Tomo just said there. Like, for myself, again, like, I can do these casts, I can talk in person virtually like it's, second nature to me now, but 10, 15 years ago, no. I was that guy who would stand in the corner and wouldn't make eye contact and couldn't, get into a conversation. And
I was there to myself, by the way.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, and it's not something, I think we did have a discussion about, I'm not sure we had as a roundtable or as another group about, becoming sociable when it comes to this kind of stuff. And it's not something you can just, flip a switch or, go to school or take a class and, become personable. It takes, you have to kind of get in there and learn it yourself. And as you said, Tomo, sometimes you just need somebody to kind of, push you in there, introduce you to a group, and kind of bring you into that talk.
Yeah, I know getting into that was very, very hard for me because, for the longest time, I would talk to people on the internet through, MSN or something, or AIM or whatever, Messenger, before Discord, which was basically Discord without voice calls. Well, it had voice calls, but it didn't have video, I don't think.
Well, you go back to bulletin boards, basically. That's where it first started, right?
Yeah, but I wouldn't even get in a call with somebody. I was just so afraid and panicked and everything, and would not touch any of that. And eventually, what really I think started opening me up is I had met a developer, Latch from Berserk Games, or Berserk Studios rather, and he encouraged me. He was streaming every day on Twitch. I became his first moderator. I was there back when he had 5 viewers, and now he's got probably 300 or 400. But he encouraged me to get back into game development because I dropped out for a little bit, discouraged and everything. And I was like, well, if I'm getting back in game development, I might as well stream it like he's doing. So I was, doing that, and I started streaming and everything and talking to people through that way. And later on, I don't know, 6 months, 9 months after I started streaming, I came into a friend who wanted to, add me on MS or Skype, I think it was, and we started talking on Skype, through text and everything. And then he wanted to do a voice call, and I was instantly like, nope. And then I thought about it. I was like, wait a minute. That's the same exact thing as me streaming, except for I can hear his voice. Well, that ain't scary anymore, and started doing that. And, after a while, it just got to the point where I could just hop in the chat with any stranger, famous or not, and just talk, But still, like, I can't, can't really do much in real life. Like in real life, I'm pretty much just a mute almost when I'm in public. Which is pretty hard to believe.
You got to work on that, man. Yeah. The only way to do it is to get out there. And, I have a lot of students that they are very shy and, they don't talk to anybody. But then when I make them form teams, if they don't form teams automatically, I'll put them on a team. I'll put all the introverts together on one team. And sure enough, 3 weeks later, they've come out of their, they've come out of the shadow, and they're, you can see them blossom, and you can see them step forth and, step into the light. So you got to put yourself out there. It's not always pretty, but, it's just the more you do it, the better you get at it, for sure.
Yeah, like my teachers, like they never did that. I was always the last man out, and I ended up doing all the projects by myself because I didn't want to get in any groups. Like nobody ever did that push for me in elementary or high school, whatever. And again, it took basically doing this to kind of get me out of my shell. And like I have random conversations with people. I mean, it's just something as simply saying, can you believe it's this hot, or how, can you, what's going on with this weather? Something that simple. But I'm the one who's initializing it. And like again, like 10, 15 years ago, I never would have done that. I could have never stand in front of people or sit in front of a computer showing my face and have a conversation. And it's just something like a lot of people, when I do these casts, whether in person or, at like a lecture, whatever, like they'll say, how do you do this? I'm like, it just takes practice. You just have to keep doing it, and eventually it becomes second nature.
Yep. It does. The more you do it, the better you get at it, for sure. And I've got people that we work with and that are students that don't want to turn their cameras on. They have a real big issue about seeing their face and stuff like that. And I've got to say, it's mandatory for you to have your camera on, because I can't teach class if I'm just talking to a bunch of gray boxes on Zoom. Right? You want to see that you're engaging people, and you want to see that back and forth. And whereas in person, it's much better. I mean, at least from a teaching standpoint, it's much better to see everybody in the class, because you kind of got the whole group, and you can feel when you do stuff right, and you can feel when you do stuff wrong, because they all react together. It happens to a lesser extent virtually, and you are missing. I think you are missing a psychic link to people, even though that probably isn't realistic. But I do, you do feel an energy in the room that is lacking when you're doing it virtually. I mean, if we are all sitting in a room together, I think it'd be a different conversation. Yeah. So there is something stripped away when you're just transmitting, in digital. I definitely think that analog has something to be considered. That being said, there are huge advantages to doing things virtually. I mean, like Sharky said, the people that aren't comfortable in the situation, I mean, most coders I've met, they always wanted to be locked in their office 24 hours a day. They did not want to be around people. They barely would come to sprint meetings. But then you have artists and designers who they feed off that interaction. So they definitely want to be with other people, and it helps them get better. So, maybe there's going to be, maybe we'll get a hybrid situation out of this in the end.
Yeah.
Where programmers work from home and the artists work in studio.
Well, in our context, it ends up being that the artists stay on the line.
Yeah, and for myself, with the presentations, I just gave 2 library presentations virtually over the last 3 weeks, and I do feel that difference when they're not in the room, when I can't see their faces. And you're right, when you're trying to have a conversation, when you're trying to present something, having that audience there and you're actually seeing people react to what you're saying it really does help keep things motivated. It's hard, like when I was doing these casts before a shark, or when I was doing the live shows before a shark came on, it's hard to carry on conversation by yourself with no reaction from anyone else. You're just like screaming into the ether, and maybe you'll see like a comment in chat or something like that, but it's not the same as if you have people and you can actually see them reacting to what you're saying.
Yeah, it definitely hurts what they call the Socratic method, where there's a bunch of people in a room, and people are, there's a big back and forth. And even though we have this back and forth with us, and it is it is present in a limited extent. I do believe there is something missing when you're doing it like this.
Mm-hmm. Now,
if I had to guess, I would say that like there's parts of the scientific community that says we have a lot more than 5 senses kind of thing. They're just sort of minor senses kind of thing. And, it may be one of those minor unnamed senses that is kind of that psychic feeling you were talking about.
I also, just to chime in there, is about 9:45 my time, so this will be for the chat. This will be officially last call for questions. We will be wrapping things up in about 15 minutes from right now.
Do we have any questions that we can answer?
Yeah,
I can talk a lot about virtual development for sure. I mean, I've been doing it now for 7 years, and now I've got with my students, I've got at any given time 4 or 5 teams working with it that I'm working with them. So I'm an expert in it now. I hate to say.
There's something interesting that we do over at Hyperkinetic Studios, and I think that we weren't actually remote working, although we had about half the team scattered across the globe. But those people were all friends of ours from at least 10 years. So that made it much, much smoother. But in that process, then we had a fair basis to work on and develop techniques and learn more about how to do it effectively. But in a lot of cases, distributed small team development is going to be dramatically different than distributed large team development. And so for the AAA teams and basically any team that's going to even more than 10, more than 20 for sure, more than 30 definitely, when you start getting that scale of team size, then the remote work demands very rigorous policy and procedure and people sticking to timetables and communicating at precise, like at regular intervals and conveying the relevant information. And that means now we all need to be good at following instructions and cooperating. Like lone wolf kind of like run and gun types aren't going to be effective in a remote large team environment. The leads can be to some extent, provided they're responsible enough to work with their leads the way their leads need to be worked. The other leads demand that they get worked with. But in a small team environment, it changes quite a bit. For us, we've never had a team larger than 15, and even at 15, some of our methodologies were strained. But for the most part, the last 7 years, we don't care when anybody works. They need to be available during certain periods of time, and they need to be committed to the results. And they need to be immediately communicating if they can't meet those results. And then everyone huddles up and figures out if we can solve it, how we can solve it, and how to help make obstacles go away or get around them. And then all of the conventional elements of your office environment just disappear. I don't care what you're doing unless I just want to know. If I care, I'm caring just for personal interest, because you're always broadcasting information that is relevant to my elements of the project. And at the beginning of a project, there's going to be a lot more talking, right? A lot more like, we're going to sit here and we're going to burn time and we're going to talk about what needs to happen because we haven't yet developed the methodologies for this project. But once we have it on lockdown and we understand what we need to do, I understand what I need to do, I understand how to broadcast that information to the rest of the team, we just go. And as long as I let you know that I'm failing, that's all that's necessary.
That's a great point. I wonder how successful you could be with a distributed team with more than 20 people, because the most we've had is 20. The most we've had is 20. I should ask my brother. I know they're like I said, they're working on Cyberpunk and they've got a huge team. I should ask him how it's working. I imagine you would almost have to come off Agile and go back to strong leads and they would have to take, they would almost have to do a Gantt chart or something if you want to, if you had that many people, because it would just be madness if you had, trying to do this online. It would just be crazy.
Yeah, I definitely see like bigger teams having a lot more trouble with the remote work and everything. But that's a great thing about smaller teams is they're agile. They can adapt to change a lot easier and everything, and they can work around things a lot better as long as you have a solid team. That is.
Yeah, but that's a big problem with virtual. It's really easy for people to quit and they just walk away from it, and they don't have a lot of buy-in when all they have to do is just not show up for a meeting all of a sudden. And people we've had a lot of people disappear, right? Where they'll be doing something and all of a sudden they just won't show up to meetings anymore and they're gone, right? Whereas if they're working in a studio, you kind of have control over them in a way, because they've got to be there every day, and they're not just going to disappear. It's going to be very evident that they're AWOL.
I've never had that specific issue. What I've had, though, very similar to that issue, is I hire somebody, and right after I hire somebody, they instantly freeze up and realize that either they don't think they're good enough to do the job, or they don't, or they realize they can't do the job, and then they just cut off all communication, right there, like 10 minutes after you hire them.
Well,
and
I think we're just... Oh. Go ahead, sir.
That's pretty much that was it.
I was just going to say that there are three types of people. There are three situations. I was going to say three types of people, but that'd be wrong. The three situations are: I have a day job and I'm helping out with my extra time. Those people it's very difficult to maintain stability with them, and that's why long-term friendships with those people is huge and beneficial. Mm-hmm. The other type is, this is their day job, and if it's their day job, then they're rarely going to mistreat it, and if they do, you fire them. Mm-hmm. And then the other one is this kind of the true indie distributed dev, where it's like, we're not even part of the same company. We've negotiated a relationship, and this relationship is fairly unique, and things need to get done. And those can sometimes those are great, and sometimes they fail, and there's a lot of uncertainty there because you don't know the people really well.
Mm-hmm. And since we have about 10 minutes, we did have a few questions come in.
I saw some good questions over there, so let's check them out.
All right, let me scroll back up here. Where was it? There's Introvert Talk. Okay, here's one from Ford asking, what are the biggest challenges you've faced doing virtual development?
For us, it's definitely, like I said, personnel that just vanish. But that may be a side effect of we're doing it with sweat equity, so you don't have their salary hanging over their heads. Everybody's doing it because they either want to do it, or they feel the project is going to be successful, and they have a piece of it, which a lot of our team, I think, works on that. We do know we have something that's going to work, and it's going to eventually pay off. But when people aren't fully invested in it, or they're new, we've had a lot of people pop in and they work for about a week and then they just go away. So I would say flaky personnel would be one of the big issues for me.
My big issue, I think, would be finding, we're not running sweat equity. We're running sweat ben equity, to where we're paying. We're just not paying very much. And it's hard to find, sometimes you nail it and you find the perfect person. It's like, yes, this is the match made in heaven, and they get on it, and they're, they still have problems from time to time, because real life always does pop up and everything, and I can't expect them to drop literally everything for the peanuts I'm paying them. But then you have the other people that flake out the second I hire them, or is just not qualified, and they take a job that they're not qualified for, and kind of stress things out. And I think what I've done, and what I've still got to get a lot better at, is identifying these issues sooner, so that I can respond faster and hire somebody else faster, to replace it, because I've wasted a lot of time waiting on certain people, and it's like we've signed a contract and now they're gone, or we've signed a contract and they're not doing anything. And I've also got to work on contracts that will allow me to drop out the second they do something like this.
That's good. One good thing about us doing Sweat Equity is we do bring a lot of new people who've never done stuff in the game industry. We do train them, and we make them game developers. We've had a lot of people come and work with us, and all of a sudden, next week they got a job at Sledgehammer or something, or they're working at a big company because we've shown them what to do. So it's a good trade-off, and for me, I like that. I like helping people. Otherwise, I wouldn't be a teacher. So I like that mode that we bring people on there. And yeah, some people don't work out, so like we find another job for them. They can always be an associate producer. They can always be QA, right?
Let's see. Another question from Thorn asks, if you could plug one resource for virtual development, what would it be?
Discord.
I would say Google, actually. Google Docs, Google Sheets. Mainly it's free. And Discord can be switched out with Slack or Skype or the other things. But Google Documents,
all the other things.
It's so valuable to be able to share those collaborative documents and to have that space on Google to store stuff and stuff. I mean, I don't think we could do our job without Google. I would say if you had the one thing to do, it would be Google. It'd be, the Google apps.
Okay.
He stole my answer.
He's the answer thief.
All right. Then Mr. Elrude asks, junior-senior relation over virtual work. How to do it and still teach a mentor junior developer? And then would love to hear your approaches.
You first.
Well, that's not a 5-minute answer, but okay. If I try to just say it like in 3 quick sentences, is your relationship with the junior doesn't change. The responsibility lies on the senior to maintain a constant stream of communication, or at least directing that person to do things and to report back, and that there's a separate thread. There's work that needs to be done, and then there is the mentorship, and that those things, as much as possible, you want to separate so that they know what is mentorship, so that those are the things that they're responsible for their own development, and these are things they're responsible for whatever money you're going to give them.
I would say you've got to have people on the team that really like working with new people, and they have the patience to work with new people. We're lucky that our leads, they're all, especially my lead tech guy and my lead art guy, they embrace new people that come on the team, and they give them, almost every chance to fail. Sometimes they have to kick them back out of the boat, but most of the times they sit there and they're sharing their screen and they're going piece by piece and they're training them, and they're just good people. They're good people that like to see people succeed. So those are critical to having that thing work out where they're coming on board, because you don't want to bring someone on board and put them in front of somebody who's not into it or teaching them what to do, because they're going to immediately have a bad taste for what you're working on.
Yeah, I've never done a official mentorship or anything, but I've done unofficial ones, that are less shorter. They're mini mentorships kind of thing, I guess you would call them. And that's where people come and join Josh's Discord or my Discord or Tim's Discord, or message me somehow, and we just have a conversation about kind of the direction they're going, kind of the problems I see potentially going for them. But they're not part of my studio or anything. It's just I'm helping people outside of my studio kind of thing. We have these chats here that we do on YouTube that also do that kind of thing, and it's not the same, but that's all I got kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm lucky, and the funny thing is, going off what you said about really experienced people, some of the people that we've had on the team that were the crappiest were people that had this amazing hybrid where they came from. They came from big studios. I'm not going to name them. I'm not going to name their studios, but they came in and they were, as so to speak, the cock of the walk, and they definitely were the cock part.
You know, as a parting statement, that reminds me of something that came to mind when we were talking about networking, and that there's a little statement that I like to make that I feel kind of wraps it all up, and that you want to change the idea that you're networking to get to know valuable people and shift it around to you are networking so that you are practicing how to be more valuable to others. And if you take that perspective, then now you're on a development track and the successful results are inevitable, provided you stick with it.
Yeah. So what, we got one more question time for?
I don't see any
60
other
seconds.
questions.
Okay,
So,
I know I got to go.
all right. So I think with that, just very quickly then, around the room, do you have any final thoughts or anything regarding virtual development that you'd like to get in before we say goodbye?
I'll let what I just said be my final statement.
That was a good one. I will say there is room for virtual development in the game business, even apart from the coronavirus. And I think certainly as internet has become more stable and fast, and it's become better, and the tools are better out there, like Discord and things like that, it's going to get more and more prevalent. I don't believe it's going to, certainly in the AAA aspect, I don't believe it's going to replace traditional game development, but I do think there's going to be, I mean, like Sharky said, there are people that could absolutely benefit from being a virtual member of the team.
Yeah, my last thoughts are, I think virtual development has its place, and it's not right for anybody. Pretty much like most things. I think the same thing goes for in-person development. I don't think it's right for everybody. And, I think it all depends on each person's situation to which is better and which kind of direction you should go. Like, I think that, it's a lot easier and a lot harder at the same time to get a job doing virtual development because there's a lot more people recruiting for it, but there's also a lot more people looking for that kind of job at the same time, where in-person development, you kind of have to know somebody to get in almost. And, it's difficult, kind of thing. And everything's got its, strengths and weaknesses. And it's all about, I guess, picking what is best.
I'm going to have to get a drink now.
And that's what Chris says. You're in the same room. Will you all be drinking?
Yeah, that's another way. How do you keep people from being drunk while they're working? I mean, there's no way.
There we go.
Maybe they're like the drunken fighter, but it's drunken game dev. To where they're really horrible at game dev until they start drinking, and then they're just masters, and they can just lay down all the art or all the programming or whatever when they're drunk.
That's how you make a game in a weekend, right? Just
exactly.
Get completely
game jam
knocked out there. All right. Well, we are at our hours, so I would like to thank our roundtable for coming on. So, if you guys have anything new to plug, any updates for your games, anything like that, I'll let you guys have a chance.
Go for it, Tomo.
My studio is called Hyperkinetic Studios. We are working on an indie game called Epictavern. It's on Steam Early Access presently. We stream development 3 times a week, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And if you come to our Discord channel, we love talking about game development, storytelling, and Epictavern. And you can find our Discord channel at discord.gg/Epictavern.
I'm coming to that. I'm definitely coming to that. My studio is impellerstudios.com, and we're working on a game called In the Black. It's a super hardcore space sim, combat sim, real science based, which makes it different from every other sim out there, which are basically made from hand wavium. And we are planning to have a closed beta this summer, and we'll probably, depending on how well that goes, we're gonna go to early access. I'm gonna have to pick your brain, Tomo, about the best way to do early access and
Nice.
Distributed develop. I mean, to do virtual development. I think that's a good idea. We haven't thought of that, so I'm definitely going to meet with you offline. But yeah, check out impellerstudios.com. Our game is called In the Black. We definitely are going to be needing a lot of players to play it because there's a lot to play, a lot to test. So come on over.
Yeah, and I run Nexus Game Studio. We are currently making Project Triad, which we're so close to getting an actual name for. Unsure if I can reveal it once we get it, but we're so close to getting an actual name. And it's a collectible card game with 5 sci-fi elements: cyberpunk, time travel, aliens, sci-fi military, and machines. And we're really meshing those all together into a story-based world with that kind of circles around cyberpunk, and it's going to be, as far as I know, the only story-heavy multiplayer-only game that will hopefully be successful because we're only incorporating the story in limited fashion to where it doesn't drag down the multiplayer. And in a consumer-friendly, free-to-play new model. You can find me on Discord mainly. There, I have no good link for that. Josh will have one in the recorded description because he didn't have one here in the live one. And also my YouTube and Twitter will also be on there, which you can find me on there too. And join Discord, and come and ask me questions if you have any. Come and test our game because hopefully we'll have a testable version very soon. But that was already supposed to happen a couple of days ago, and stuff went wrong.
And we could definitely do something about early access as a future roundtable topic as well. But that is going to do it. So, gentlemen, it was a pleasure hanging out with you. For those of you watching, we plan to do these roundtable casts once a month, usually around like the third Tuesday. We may change that depending upon scheduling. And if you are a developer interested in coming on for either one of these roundtables or a genre or game-specific roundtable chat, please get in touch. As Shark said, there'll be links to everybody's social media and projects down below in the recorded version. I'll be back later tonight for our regular game streaming, and for our roundtable. Again, thank you so much for coming on.
It was a pleasure. Thanks for having me, guys.
See you later.
All right. Well, with that said, everyone, have a great rest of your night, and come back for daily discussions on game design here and on Game Wisdom, where we examine the art and science of games. See everybody later, and take care.